Yo, what's up, everybody? So, I kind of want to go over some splash cards, some cards that you might want to put into your deck, even if you're not in those elements. If you don't know what splashing is, it's a term from a few other TCGs where basically it means I'm running cards that aren't normally part of this element or this strategy in my deck because it's just that good and I might need it to supplement something. For example, maybe you run some Hephaestus, which is a fire card, in a predominantly Earth Centaur deck, so you can search out artifacts for your September. That would be splashing a fire card into an earth deck for its effect. And there's quite a few cards you want to run in decks that aren't in their elements normally, and that you might want to put one or two spirits of a different element in your deck to run those. So I kind of want to go over what I feel like are my top five. And I do want to start with an honorable mention here. The first, I guess you could say this is the sixth instead of the fifth, but it represents a classic card, is Aramir. Now, when I say it represents a classic card, it represents cards with high stat values. So this honorable mention could also include, say, Necruff, maybe Galaxy. Because they have high stat totals, Aramir is the set 1 card with the most total combined stats of 4 attack, 5 defense, making a total of 9 stats on a 1 cost. It's a great defensive body, even if you're not running Wind. And it's a decent offensive body that even when you can run like a stadium or two in a different element, you can just misenchant Aramir and get it to a 5-6 stat line. That's pretty solid. And then again, you can also run like, say, Necruff, say Sorlet, the 5 attackers, just to kind of give your early game a little bit of oomph, especially if you're running Thunder, when Thunder doesn't have that early game offensive power, since nothing in Thunder has 4 attack or over 4 attack. So honorable mention, Aramir / high statted 1-drops. Generally okay to misenchant and run out to try to get some board presence early game when your deck might be lacking that. The number 5, I have Pgus. I think Pgus is in a classic card with Thunderstorm and Tornado where it disrupts back row. Where I think Pgus helps a little bit more is the fact that it's the cheapest and most efficient destroy effect for the back row. You can splash Thunderstorm and Tornado, but those are a bit more costly in a splash scenario, or doesn't quite destroy something as in Tornado. So I think Pgus is pretty strong as a splash card. 1 or 2 of is usually good enough to just kind of potentially draw for a late game out or maybe even early game disruption. But I think Pgus is pretty solid. It's just cheap. It's got low stats, so it's probably not going to survive, but if you're playing a little bit of a more mid-range or a longer like game deck, early Pgus to stop, the face downs early when your opponent doesn't know what you're playing yet, it's a pretty solid card. Number 4, I have Ash Rabbit. So it's a solid defensive body at 5 defense on turn 1, and it replaces itself immediately when you cast it with Thunder. The only real downside is you're never going to attack with it, and if you're trying to ascend out of it, you're going to be misenchanting unless you're playing other Thunder cards. But this is a splash list, so we're just assuming you're not going to Sonic or Gatabolt or Signatric on turn 2. We're assuming you're splashing this to find something maybe. You can run it for finding Ambrosia, to find artifacts in the Centaur decks. It's a great kind of mid-range control just splash card if you're not running a ton of Thunder to find the pieces you need for your combo or your control package. So you stick it on board, it'll stick 5 defense, it'll get a replacement of itself, and that's about all it's going to do. It'll probably just end up sticking on board as a 5 defense until it either gets destroyed by your opponent or you decide to attack after opening up your opponent's board with it. But other than that, it's just, unless you're playing Thunder, will just stick on board and net you a defensive body early. But that card filtering is very good. So number 3, I have Earthquake. It says it on the card. It targets and destroys an Elestral. You can't get more simple than that. It's just going to remove a threat without losing your normal summon for turn that maybe like a Kinleo or Boombat might do. And if you just run maybe 2 Earth Spirits and a couple Earthquakes in your deck, getting that clutch Earthquake is going to be pretty useful. I don't necessarily know how many you want to splash for because at 2 it is expensive, but it's got a very powerful effect, so splashing some Earthquakes for just premium removal, it's a pretty useful card. So I think you might want to take a peek at it, use it if you can, and if you're playing Earth, why aren't you running 3 of? Number 2, I have Tsunami. But there's a caveat here. The more people that run Tsunami, the more Leviathans are in Spirit decks, the less powerful Tsunami is. Also, this card's dead against water decks. But because water currently is in a very, I wouldn't say it's in a bad state, but water is usually just kind of a support package at the moment. Not a lot of people are enchanting Elestrals off the rip with water, making Tsunami a great card to just stop attacks or get over large attacking Elestrals with your smaller stuff that maybe only have like 2 or 3 defense, and you want to attack it with, a Jolton or something. So Tsunami is really good at just kind of manipulating the opponent's Elestrals, stopping the battle phase for a turn, and stalling out for 1 water. It's really cheap, it's really efficient, and I don't think anybody would argue with me it's not at least in the top 5 for cards that you splash in a deck. It literally is in almost every deck right now because of how little water is being played. Now, if you're playing a water deck and your opponent's playing Tsunami, they're definitely siding out their Tsunamis ASAP because it's not going to affect your deck at all. So if you're in water, congratulations, you beat one of the most splashed cards in the game. Probably one of the cards that are in most of the decks besides, say, Nectar of the Gods and Ambrosia. So that's number 2 Tsunami. Alright, and number 1, I think this is something that won't come as a surprise to some and might be super like epiphany moment for others, are the spirits. Every element except for Earth has interaction with spirits being on the field. So you have Eruption, Tsunami, Sorlet, and Roiceros. Those cards together are really powerful and seen pretty commonly in a lot of decks. And splashing spirits to get, say, over Roiceros to prevent a Tsunami from stopping an important attack, preventing Sorlet from being such a manipulative just combat machine early game, is really useful, and you only would need to run 1 or 2 of these spirits extra in your main deck or in your side deck to swap in against certain matchups to prevent those effects. It's a pretty low cost, and at worst, if you're running, say, a Zaptor and you're going up against an Earth Water deck and they don't have the Roiceros that you need to get over, use it for your Ambrosia, use it for your Nog, use it just to expend when you take damage. It's a pretty low cost, and it's a pretty high impact in certain situations to splash spirits. So I think splashing your spirits is definitely one of the easiest and strongest ways you can kind of prevent some of the strongest cards in the game from doing things that they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, that's my top 5, plus a few extra commentary and other things, but I think those are all really powerful cards you can splash into your deck, even when you're not in those elements, to just help and not just break the game, but win your games. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next video, and have a nice one. Peace.